In this lecture, we are going to learn how to use the step out and run to cursor functionality. In order to do that, we are going to create a new function in here in Mystery Moodprint. The reason why we are not going to use the Fibonacci function is because the step out functionality is not so effective there, and we are going to see later why it's not. To create a new function here, just copy and paste the function we have already written. Change the name, print the number, and we are going to print what number we are calculating the Fibonacci value for. Calculating for number. Yeah, very simple change. And we are going to call this function from here. So mystery print the number 3. We are going to set a breakpoint in here, and we are going to run in debug mode. Imagine you don't know what the definition of the function is and you want to step into. But when you step into, you realize it's not interesting. So you would like to place the debugger after the execution of the call. Well, in order to do that, if the function is very short, you could just step over. But if the function is very long and it has a huge hierarchy, maybe you would like to execute the program until it finishes the execution. In order to do that, you can use the step out functionality, as you can see in here. Just click over it, and the debugger will step just after the function call. You could have used resume program instead by setting here a breakpoint. That would have the same effect, but you have to create new breakpoints and remember to delete them. That's another way of doing it, but you have to do more work. So why wasn't it effective, this functionality, in the get function of Fibonacci? We are going to try it out. So we continue the execution, and we are going to step out the function. But what we end up here is that we don't get what we expected. We expected to get to a point where the execution of the function had already finished. But instead of that, we are still into the function. The reason for this is that stepping out continues the execution of the program until it hits an active breakpoint or until it gets out of the current function. What happens in here is that we have continued the execution of the program. We got into here in the general case, we executed the get function again, and we hit an active breakpoint. That's why we stopped in here, and that's why it isn't so effective, because it stops in active breakpoints. Right now we are going to see run to cursor. Run to cursor is a functionality that allows you to stop the program where you have placed your cursor without actually having to set a breakpoint and then remember to delete it. Maybe you just want to stop in a very specific place for a very specific execution and not for all the executions you're going to perform or all the iterations you're going to perform. Then in order to do that, you have to hit this button in here, run to cursor, use the shortcut, or right click, run to cursor. And when you do that, if the code actually hits that line, it's going to suspend, it's going to stop, as it had a breakpoint. The last functionality we are going to see is force run to cursor. It is a very useful functionality because it allows you to stop into a given line regardless of the state of the breakpoints you hit. Even if you have active breakpoints set up, the execution of the program is not going to stop and you are going to get directly where you have your cursor placed. And it is very useful because you can get to a place without actually having to disable all the breakpoints. And it saves lots of work because you don't have to disable the breakpoints and enable them again. We are going to see what happens if we would like to stop the program in here with run the cursor. Or even better, we are going to place a breakpoint and see what happens. So I have to hit run the program again and again because it is stopping at a lot of places before actually hitting this place. We are going to repeat the process, but this time we are going to use the functionality of force run to cursor. So right click and hit force run to cursor. So we have skipped all those stops that were very annoying because we were not interested in them, and we have just stopped the program execution in here.